Hey everybody, you're watching CAD Roll Hunter, and I picked up this little collection. It looks like we've got some oldies. I'm hoping we've got some goodies in here. Stay tuned. Hey everybody, this is James and you're watching my channel CAD Roll Hunter. I paid another visit to my friend Tim the antique dealer, and he had just picked up this little collection of coins. It looks like somebody was collecting older pennies. These are pennies, he told me, in these envelopes. Many of them are labeled in the 40s, so we got some oldies. There might be some varieties we can look for if we get to some 48s or 49s, and I thought I saw a couple in there. We got some tubes of things. Here's one I saw that was interesting. 1964 new. So I'm hoping these are going to be BU. There is a original bank wrapped beautiful coins here. Confederation 1967. Not sure if I'll even open that up though. There is a double die obverse you can look for, but that looks to be a full bank wrapped Canadian Imperial Bank of Commerce original roll. I see we've got some quarters, some nickels. There might be some dimes in here. And I saw one little bit of silver in here. That's a silver quarter. You can tell by the look. So I'm going to get these out of the tote. We'll take a look and we'll see. I paid 40 bucks for everything here. It was a pretty awesome deal. We just need to find one nice gem in here to be well worth our money. So let me get it out of here and we'll take a closer look at what we got. So everything's out of the box and lots of cool stuff. The envelopes of pennies, you saw that. They're here. There are lots of different dates. I mentioned the 48. Looks like this person was adding them as they got them and then keeping a tally. So in this case, it looks like there's 20 1948s, which is great because this is one of the years we want to scope for a variety. That'll be really cool. But that's pretty awesome. So we'll go through those. I've got all of the essential tools we need. Of course, I've got my Charlton guide if there's anything I want to see that is valuable. Got a scale, I've got my magnet, and I've got my scope all on screen here. If we're looking at pennies, we're going to want to scope things absolutely. I think there are some things that are probably just face value. Like there's some dimes here, and these don't appear to be silver dimes, but we'll check them out to be sure. Some of these things, like these are 1968s, everything in this holder. You can see that penny was probably a BU red cent, but it's starting to change. The other coins in here are made of nickel, except for this quarter, I'm pretty sure. But we'll put the magnet to that just to be sure. So they don't really command much of a premium, although they do look like they're in pretty good shape. I am interested to see what is in here because this is all Tombac nickels from 1942 and 43. Excited about that because there's a key date in the Tombac nickels. And we'll check to see what else is in here. These 1964s, if they are all brilliant uncirculated, we'll certainly want to scope them for the hanging 4 variety. That's a die clash on the coin. We'll look at that when it comes to it. So where to start in all of this? I think maybe we'll just get a few of these things out of the way. We'll check some of these things that I'm pretty sure might not be too special. This doesn't look like silver as well, so we'll see what we got. I guess we'll start with the 68s right here. All right, here are the 68s, and they do look pretty nice. You can see there's still a fair amount of luster. Really nice fields on these ones here. That's the dollar. What we'll want to do, of course, is check to see. Of course, these $68 are all nickel. Same thing with the 50-cent pieces. They didn't make silver versions of the 1968. The quarters and the dimes, though, in this transition year were either 100% nickel or 50% silver. So that quarter, which definitely has that bright white appearance of silver, and it's got a little bit of a frosted cameo finish, though it has some either circulation wear, maybe even wear from just being in that container. And this dime looks like nickel, and absolutely it's magnetic. So always helpful to have our magnet with us here to check. And of course, this penny here starting to lose its luster. I think it's probably just bound for the copper cup, which I didn't bring out, but if we find things that aren't worth keeping or separating, we will put it in the copper cup. I separate by year all of my laureate portrait and earlier pennies, so 64 and earlier, But 68, unless it really is in BU, I'm not going to set it aside at all. There are 8 dimes in this little baggie, and they all appear to be 1968. I'll take them out just to be sure. And once again, they all look to be nickel. I don't think there's anything silver in here. So I have checked them all. These are all beautiful 1968s. Very little in the way of marks. I'll probably set these aside for any collectors who might want a 1968. But I checked them with the magnet, and they are all nickel. They're all magnetic. Next up, we'll look at this tube of quarters, and just by the edges, I don't see anything silvery in here either. We'll get the lid off of this guy, and that is a gorgeous 1969. I'm going to very carefully get these all out of here. We'll take a look to see if they're all 69s or if they might be other years, but that's a beautiful quarter. Okay, I got them out here. Careful not to scratch these up because I have a feeling these are all going to be beautiful coins. And as I almost drop it on the ground, yeah, another 1969. I think this might be all 1969. So somebody came across some brand new 1969s and put them in here to safeguard, and they appear to be like, this looks like it might have a tiny bit of wear, almost like an AU right by the neck of the caribou. So it could just be from sitting in this tube and moving it around, but actually, I mean, these look pretty nice. So not a huge premium for these, and these would be 100% nickel, but the nickel content of these wouldn't be worth yet 25 cents. So people regularly ask me, do you hold on to nickel composed quarters or dimes? And the answer is no, there's not enough nickel in them, at least not right now, to equate face value. So usually when I find a 1969, it just goes back to the bank. Same thing with a 1969 dime, which just goes back to the bank. But these are pretty beautiful coins. These are pretty much uncirculated, so I'll probably set these aside. Oh, now there's a 68. So again, the 68s will want to check, but this certainly looks like it's going to be nickel. So I'll take the magnet to it and confirm that that's the case. So we got some 69s and we got some 68s. It looks like the rest of these might be, no, they're kind of mixed in here. 68, 69. So, but doesn't look like we're going to have anything silver. And this one looks like it might be a little bit more circulated than others. It kind of has a duller finish to it for sure. So doesn't look like we got anything there. I will pass the magnet over it just in case. We got a bunch of beautiful 68s and 69s. Really, really nice. Way better than you would find in circulation, but nothing silver there. And here's just a little side-by-side of two 1968 quarters just to see the difference. That nickel one on the right and the silver one on the left, very, very different. So not hard to spot at all. And just here's another look. Here's how it would appear in a roll. So I know a lot of American collectors, when they're looking through their quarters with those dark coppery edges, when you get a Canadian quarter, it kind of looks like you might have silver because it is a different color than the copper. But even in our quarters, you can see that silver really, really stands out. And if you're following along at home, that's $7.50 in face value right there, just to see if we got close to my $40 investment in this little lot. Now, I don't know if you noticed this one here. This is a mangled and bent coin. It is a quarter. And if you can see closely when we look at it, that's a 1943. And it looks like somebody has maybe tried to melt it. It's been bent. It's bubbling. It is terrible. But if this is a 1943, this is 80% silver. And silver has been on a tear lately. It's over $30 an ounce US. In Canadian dollars, a Canadian silver quarter is worth almost $6.50 right now. It's crazy. To just find out if this is a real silver quarter, we're going to just throw it on the scale here. It should weigh 5.83 grams, give or take. So we'll put that on there and just see. And yeah, 5.81, it weighs true. And if I just take it, we'll just throw it on the desk and hear if it's got that silver ping. And I think it does. It's got that sound. It's a little bit odd because I think it's misshapen, but I think we got a real silver quarter here, 1943, and I'm not exactly sure how I'm going to stack this up. If I'm going to try to bend it, if I do, I might break it. So we might have to set it aside, but it seems to be silver nonetheless, so that's really cool. Next up, I've got a partial tube of nickels, and what I can see from the top and from the bottom is these appear to be uncirculated 1967 bunny nickels. These are always fun to find, these Centennial of Confederation, 1967. It looks like these are probably all going to be that. And maybe I'll just slide them out of here and we'll get a good look to see. They are beautiful coins. Look at that. That is just a gorgeous nickel. 5 cents, 1967. Look at the field on that. It looks almost flawless. Just gorgeous. We'll see if that's what all of these are. It appears to be. So I don't think I need to look too much further. That is just a beautiful roll. They're all going to be the same for sure. All these bunny nickels. So that is really, really cool. Awesome. So these next two tubes of nickels, this one here, the shorter stack, are primarily round edges, which means they could be, if they're laureate portrait 63 or 64, but at the end I see a newer one. It could be another bunny nickel. We'll get those out and take a look. But this one are mostly those 12-sided nickels. There's a few that aren't. So of course, if we find 64s, we're looking for the extra water line. I'll look at that with you. We'll take a peek. And if there are laureate portraits in here, there could be a bunch of years right into the early 50s. The first year for Queen Elizabeth, of course, was 1953. They look like they're all nickel. I don't see any of the chromium plated steel in here, but we'll unroll it. We'll take a peek. Well, it looks like we're going to have a bunch of really beautiful nickels here, regardless of years. These ones here don't look to be the laureate portrait. That's a 68. We'll go through those, but we'll start with the more interesting ones here. This, a gorgeous 1962, just beautiful. There are some varieties we can look for. There's one with a double date and 62. Let's throw this one under the scope and see if we can see any doubling. I got that 62 under the scope here, and this is an interesting one because under the scope, you can see there is evidence of die deterioration. And the 1962 double date is just that, it's die deterioration. And you can see it at the base of the 1, along the side of the 9, the 2. If I rotate the coin, you would see that this doesn't actually go away. It persists as we rotate the coin. So technically speaking, this is a 1962 with some doubling evident on the coin based on die deterioration. However, the variety that's actually worth a fairly significant amount has more significant doubling. So here is an image from Coins in Canada of a brilliant uncirculated 1962. And you can see the double date on here. And if we look even closer, it's got the same kinds of lines that we've got, but it's more significant all around the numbers. So that's really what you're looking for on the 1962 double date. I haven't found any like this, though I have found lots like this. It seems like as the die started to deteriorate, you would receive this. This is what you would get out of that. But they didn't replace those dies early enough such that you ended up getting some really heavily doubled dates like this one here. They would have corrected that in other years far more quickly. So not exactly sure what happened or why those dies were working so hard for so long. So this isn't exactly what I would call a 1962 doubled date, but it is pretty interesting anyway, and I'll look through the rest and see what we got. Here's the very next coin, another 1962, and you can see this doesn't feature any of that die deterioration doubling, though this coin is not nearly in as good shape as that last one was. Wow. The next one is a gorgeous 1964. We're going to want to look at this one closely too, because we really would love to find a extra water line in this condition. Here is that 64, just in gorgeous condition. What we want to be looking for is a die crack right from the front of this log, right underneath the designer's initials. It looks like another ripple in the water, an extra water line as they call it. This is not it, but this is a gorgeous nickel. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start to set these aside by year because we've got a bunch to look through and see what we've got. I pulled a couple of other 1962s out, and you know what? I just pulled this one here, this 1962. I said I'd never found a double date before, the 1962 double date, and we've got one here. Check it out. You can see the doubling here. You can see it more along the 9, under the 6, under the 2, but you can even see it across Canada, and that is what we could see in the example. It's still not quite as prominent as the example from Coins in Canada, but I think this is surely a 1962 double date. Really awesome find. And just to show you why this is an awesome find, here is the Charlton catalog here. And you can see the 1962 in an MS60 is about 50 cents. MS63, $1.50. MS64, $10. Now these are graded coins if you get into the higher mint state. But I think one of the ones we found so far might be in an MS64 or better. But look at that 1962. An AU50, it's an $8 coin. This coin is going to be a mint state coin for sure. It's got a few little marks on it, but it is a mint state coin. It's got a little, maybe a tiny little scratch or something. This is an awesome find. And so according to the Charlton catalog here, if this was in an MS60, it's a $15 coin. That's pretty awesome. So far, a bunch of 62s, some 63s, no more double dates, but we got an oldie that snuck in here, a 1950. This is a King George VI. That's a cool find. A nice old nickel in this roll of beautiful nickels. This one's a little bit more circulated than the others, but still in pretty decent shape for sure. We got our first 1961 in here, and this one has an interesting little die chip at the base of the 1 here in the date. And this is actually pretty common. If you've seen my videos, I've done other ones where I went through some rolls, found a bunch of 61s. Got a lot of these. There's some also die chips in the 6 as well you can find. Really cool. And isn't that weird? Just stuck in the middle of this roll, a 1997 US nickel. I guess we'll want to take a peek at it and make sure there isn't something really special about it. I don't think so. Very odd. Now this is a cool one. We've actually found 4 1950s in this roll, so 4 King George VI, but this one, this 1951, is commemorating 200 years of nickel in Sudbury, Ontario. And it's actually in beautiful condition. It's got a bit of circulation on it, of course, but lots of detail. Well, there's some varieties you can find with a little bit of impression. It looks like a half moon below the date, 1951. This isn't it, but that's a beautiful nickel. Well, I said it earlier, we really only needed to find one gem to make this whole purchase worthwhile, and we might have done so with this 1962 double date, which is pretty cool. We've also got a couple silver coins, and I haven't even begun to look at all the rest of the stuff, so there might be some more goodies in here. Hopefully there are. Much of this second roll have been beautiful 1965s, and I'm scoping every single one of them because there is a very rare large bead variety where there's a large bead in between the 2 Roman numeral 1s there in Elizabeth II. But I found something interesting on one I've got under the scope right now. I would have missed it, I think, if I was just looking at it. This one is a little bit more circulated than the rest, but have a look just to the left of the Roman numerals, and there is what might appear to be a gouge, but I think this is actually a struck through. I think there might have been a foreign object on the planchet. I don't see any raised metal around it. Something was on the planchet when it was struck, I think, and it doesn't appear to be a gouge as much as it is just an impression on the coin where the metal was sort of displaced on that part of the design because something was on it. That's another really cool find. I don't know if it's worth much at all necessarily, but definitely an interesting error. Now here are those Tombac nickels, and these are really exciting actually. There were 2 varieties of Tombac nickels, 2 years really. The 1942, it's the traditional beaver design with the 12-sided edge. This is the second hardest to find nickel in the modern Canadian nickels with the beaver design. The 1948 is about 1.8 million. This one here in Tombac is 3.396 million. So a very hard one to find. Even in a VF20, the Charlton catalog shows it at about $1.50. So these are already certainly more than face value. And then the 1943, they were all made, oh, and I should say they also made the 42 in nickel as well. It's a transitional year. In 1943, they made these for the war effort, the V for victory, and Morse code along the edges that says, "We win when we work willingly." And this one's got some kind of corrosion on it, but I'll have to look through and see if these are all in fact, and it looks like these are all going to be the 43 Victory. There are a few in the back here that look like they might be in better condition with some luster on them. So very cool. That's a really nice one. A couple little spots, but in really nice condition. That's wicked. And then these guys do appear to be all the 42 Tombac Beaver. That is an awesome little find in a roll here. Now there's a lot of pennies to go through, so I think I want to go through the ones that look older first. We got a roll here that says 40 to 53 old pennies. We'll want to open that up and get into them. This one says 40 to 72, 1954 missing, so it might be just a run of dates. I don't know if they're going to be uncirculated or circulated or what. That'll be interesting. We might start with these two, and I'll lay them out here by year. And then we'll want to check at least one of these envelopes to see if, in fact, they are all what they say to be on the envelope. So we'll check that out. But let's start with these two here and see if they are what they say they are and what kind of condition they're in. So the first one is absolutely a 1940. And if we look through, 41, 42, 43, 44, 45. So I think we are going to get them all the way through. If we skip ahead here, we're into the 50s. And towards the very back, there's a 1969. They might be out of order at the back here. No, 68, 69. There's a beautiful 67. Oh, and there's a few more here. 70, 71, 72. So that does seem to be what it says it was going to be. So I'll sit these out by year. We'll open this guy next here and see what we got. This might be more randomly assorted oldies. And that last roll was what it purported to be. It was some circulated Canadian coins, pennies from 1940 to 1952. 2 or 3 of each year that I've added to the stack, a couple of years missing. And then we got this bag of assorted pennies. We'll see what we got going on in here, but it looks like we got more of the same. Well, that was interesting. As I was going through those, all of those coins in that baggie were either 1940 or 1947 with the maple leaf. Those were struck in 1948. No other years except for one sole lone 1946. My theory is that they gathered up what might, like envelopes might have broken. I bet if we look in here, there's no 47 maple leaf and no 1940. And that's probably what's happened. And that 46 probably just spilled out. Rather than go through all of these, I think what we want to do is I'm going to look through the 48s and the 49s. We're going to scope them and see if there are the rare varieties. I have a feeling that everything in these envelopes are just run-of-the-mill circulated pennies, just meticulously sorted out by year. So let's look at the interesting ones to see if we might find some gems. As expected, we had 20 1948s and 15 1949s in these envelopes. I've stacked them up here and I've added the 48s and 49s that we'd found earlier. We're going to scope them all. We're looking at the denticles and where the A in Gratia points to, the second A in Gratia. I'll pull it up on the scope. We'll start with the 48s. Here are all of the varieties listed here in the Charlton catalog. In the 1948, there are 3 varieties. 2 of them are common. The one we're looking for is the A pointing to small denticles. We're going to scope them all. It's a great idea to have a scope because these would be really, really hard to see. This one we have on screen here, this is the A pointing to a large denticle. So that's a pretty common one. We're going to go through all of them here, and we're looking in the second A in Gratia. There's an A pointing to large denticle. A pointing between large denticles. So we got a couple varieties. What we're looking for is the small denticle. They'll look like really hairlines. So we don't need to look too closely at all of these. These are all large denticles, but we want to find the small denticle. And that is the small denticle. That's an A pointing to small denticle. That is awesome. If it was a VF20, it would be a $10 coin. And you can see the picture there, the small denticles. That's what we've got. So this might not be a VF20. This is pretty worn, but that's awesome. That is a harder to find variety. It's pretty worn, pretty circulated, but it's a hard to find variety, and we found one, and we still have more to go through. So I'm going to set this one aside. We'll see if we've got any more in there. I'm really excited about that. That's awesome. So let's just get right back to it. Large denticle. Large denticle. And that's what we would expect for all of these. But we found a small denticle, and that's wicked. So far, everything else has been large denticle, which is what we would expect. And that one is also large denticle. Yeah, I think so. Yeah. So everything else was a large denticle, and if we just needed to be sure about it, here is our comparison. The small denticle right there, very different. The two varieties of 1949 are both large denticles. What we're looking for is the A pointing to a large denticle. Here's the first one under here, and it's the A pointing between the large denticles. So we're hoping to find an A that is pointing dead right to the center of one of those denticles. If we found both of these varieties, that's between, I mean, that would just be incredible. But you never know, and that's why we kind of hunt through coins. That's why I buy little old collections. A lot of older collectors might not have known about this particular variety. That's between. Between. I mean, it's never likely that we're going to find it at any one time. But if you keep looking and you're persistent, you're bound to find something sooner or later. Between. So you can see why these are hard to find, because we're looking through a lot and everything is between so far. And that one also between, but those denticles are a little harder to see. Well, nothing in the 1949s. All of them were pointing between the denticles. Oh well, but we found a 48 harder to find variety, and that's awesome. We've got a few other pennies to go through. They look to be more modern. We'll take a peek. We'll see what we got. If there's anything else interesting in here. So far, this has been really cool. The next tube had more circulated older coins, but it did have our only one so far from the 30s, a first year King George VI, 1937. So that's a cool one. And there were a few more 48s and 49s. I'll scope them and see if we had another find in here. Well, there were only 3 1948s in here, and wouldn't you know it, there's another A pointing to small denticle. That's awesome. So we found 2 in this box. That is really, really special. There were a few envelopes here that had coins from the 60s marked new. Here's an example from the 1964 envelope. Very beautiful. What I'm doing is scoping them to see if we've got any of the die clashes, the hanging digits. And I got a 63 under the scope over, sorry, 62. And this is one of the hanging 2s. This might be a double or triple hanging 2. You can see that's the die clash. That's the queen's chin from the other side of the coin. There might be 2, possibly 3 of these lines on here. So these dies may have clashed multiple times. This is really common in the 50s and 60s in almost every single year. It's known as the hanging variety. This would be the 1962 hanging 2, or in some cases, the double or even triple hanging 2. couple of coins later, there's another one that makes it look like that 2 is hanging from a stem or something. And another one, this got some dark markings on it, but it does have that hanging 2 part. If I kind of rotate it around, you can kind of see it, but not as easy to see as the other one for sure. Bunch of 1963s in one of the envelopes. This one's starting to turn brown, but it is very clearly a triple hanging 3. You can see 3 impressions of the Queen's chin all there. That is really, really cool. Kind of wish it was red, but we got a few more here to go through that are in better condition. You never know. Here's another one, and this coin gives you a little bit of an idea of what dirty fingerprints will do to a coin over time. Somebody put their fingerprints on it, and you can kind of really see it here. And look at what the oils have done in the time that this has been in this envelope. But that's another hanging 3. Wow, we are doing really well here. That's another one. Really, really clear to see that hanging 3. And there is our 4th hanging 3. This one's at least a double, but there could be more. Just how wide that spread is there. That could be 2. That could be the 3rd one. So this might be a triple. But it just tells you how common these are. And if you can find them in a really beautiful mint state, they're really, really nice. They're not listed in the Charlton catalog, but they're really common. And collectors do attribute some value to these varieties, particularly if they're in really nice shape. Some collectors will try to find a hanging digit for every year where this was a common occurrence. Here's that roll of 1964s. You can see the edges have turned dark from being in the paper, but the coins themselves look like they might be in mostly good shape. There's the obverse there. Nice shiny reverse. I'll scope all these 64s for the hanging variety as well, see if we find any. And then I'll move on. We've got some 1967s, which I'll be wanting to scope for any of the double die. We're pretty much done. There's just a couple things I think I didn't show you yet. I'm almost entirely through that roll of 1964s, and I haven't found anything until now. I've got one under the scope here, and I've found a minor variety that I haven't found before. This is called the extra spine, and it's basically just a little bit of raised metal right here in the spine of the maple leaf. That little extra spine right there, I'll try to get nice and close if I can without distorting from the monitor, is a minor variety. It is recognized in the Hans Zoll book of varieties. The first edition is reprinted in the most recent Charlton guide. This is, but that only goes to 1960. So the 1964 would have been in a later version. But here it is, the extra spine. I'll pull it up on Coins in Canada. Now here's the extra spine on Coins in Canada. There are a couple of different variations of this. You'll see this extra spine looks a little closer to the little twig here, whereas mine is a little closer to that little bud. There are other versions that you can find. Here's an example I'm going to pull up from eBay that is selling right now for $14 US. And if I pull up the second picture here, this is going to give us a close-up of that extra spine, very similar to mine with that extra metal, much closer to the little bud there. That's pretty much what I've got. $14 US, that's pretty good for a 1-cent find. I'm glad I found something in that roll. It wasn't exactly what I was looking for, but it's probably even better and perhaps more valuable. We also had this little pouch here, which is going to give us our 2 oldest coins of this little coin lot here, both King George V, circulated condition. That's a common 1932. And this one is a also common 1933, but really awesome to find some King George V pennies. I don't find them very often at all. And I'm not sure if this just fell in the tote, but it's the only foreign coin in the whole thing, a 1953 1 cent from the Netherlands. Pretty interesting. Doesn't look like the collector who collected all of these Canadian coins was really looking for foreigns, so I'm not exactly sure how it got in there. My last up to look through are these BU 1967 Centennials. The double dies are really scarce and hard to find, but you never know. And what we're looking for here is doubling in the legend here. It's a rotated hub doubling. We would see that a double serif, for instance, on the G, this is the part where people really look for it. You would see another serif to the right of this, totally separate of that. And its spread continues as you move across Regina. Well, we have found something here. This is not going to be the doubled die obverse, but there's definitely doubling here across the legend. This may very well be die deterioration. This is from PCGS, which recognizes the doubled die, and you can see that double serif over there. And that's not exactly what we've got going on. So this is probably machine doubling or die deterioration, but that's a pretty cool find. The other kind of doubling we can find on this coin is on the date, and it's die deterioration on the date. And it actually commands a premium too, if you can find it. This one doesn't have that. I have found lots and lots of those, and others that exhibit similar kind of doubling. If you check out my old videos, you might run across some early penny videos where I looked through a whole roll of these 1967s and found some really interesting coins. Well, it was starting to look like we weren't going to find one, but we did find a 1967 with doubling on the date. There is that die deterioration right there. Pretty cool. So that was tons of fun. I still have some work to do to go through some of these pennies, but I think they're just circulated pennies from the 40s. That's really cool to add to my collection. But this video has gone on long enough. We don't need to look at that now, but we got lots of great stuff. We got some uncirculated nickels and quarters and some other things, some dimes from the 60s. That's really cool. We found a couple silver here, including this one that's totally mangled. That adds some value to the purchase. And we got tons of coins, pretty much everything from the 40s and 50s. But it really pays to have a scope because we found some really cool stuff that I think we would have not known about if we hadn't scoped them. And probably the person who had this collection didn't have a scope. You just can't see this stuff with the naked eye, but we got that 1962 with the double date. That's awesome. We got this one that's got some kind of a strike through on the obverse legend. Very cool. We got two of the 1948 A pointing to small denticle. We got a bunch of pennies with the hanging digit. That was really cool. We got the 1967 with some weird doubling on the reverse and some weird doubling on the obverse. That die deterioration and something else that's going on. Things that we would not have found without a scope. Anyway, I'm going to have fun. I'm going to put these up in flips, put them in my collection so I know what they are and I don't lose track of them. And yeah, I've still got to tube up all of these pennies. I separate them all out by year. I'm going to have lots of fun, and I hope you also had lots of fun looking through this really cool coin collection that I got for 40 bucks. And we got some things that I think have really given us the value that I paid for this. So if you liked the video, you made it this far, please subscribe to my channel, Cadroll Hunter. That would be much appreciated. Thank you so much for watching. Hit that like button. We'll see you again next time. The sponsors of today's video are Lighthouse Canada and the Charlton Press. Lighthouse Canada is the leading supplier of high-quality numismatic supplies in Canada, and the Charlton Press is the leading publisher of coin and paper money catalogs and price guides for Canadian collectors. Go check out their online stores today and use the exclusive discount code CRH20 for 20% off all your purchases.